Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And we are recording here on a Saturday afternoon. We're going to finish up just in time to get to all of the hotly anticipated All-Star Saturday night stuff. I'm sure we're all, Blake, I bet you're counting down the hours here on Valentine's Day to watch the dunk contest, right?
Oh, 100%. And hey, shameless plug, I'll be doing a bit of live blogging for All-Star Saturday and Sunday on sportsillustrated.com. So if you're out and not able to watch it or just want to come hang, please do. I'll be honest with you, I'm interested to see how the dunk contest is going to go with no Mac McClung, and Jalen Duren was accepting an invite and then he's not in it. So my pick, I guess, is Jackson Hayes to win it. It's just not that exciting of a field. I'm more excited to see Damian Lillard in the three-point contest. That's what I'm looking forward to for All-Star Saturday. But yeah, I don't know how this All-Star Saturday will go.
Yeah, and the only real Pistons tie is the Rip Hamilton and the Shooting Stars event thing that they're bringing back, and I guess that could be kind of fun. But yeah, I'll be honest, guys, I'm not tuning in for anything this evening. It's unfortunate that my wife and I, we scheduled the Valentine's dinner tomorrow night, not tonight, which leaves me more open for this evening's festivities instead of tomorrow's, which I actually do care to tune into. So that was just, that's on us. But yeah, Blake, I mean, you got, what do you think about All-Star Saturday? Let's just get that out of the way. Like, the dunk contest is now what it was. It feels like there's not even really the excitement around the 3-point shootout that we had a few years ago when it was, Steph and Clay and all that. So like, what's your takeaway here? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because I feel like I was always super excited for All-Star Saturday growing up, and the Shooting Stars thing was super fun, especially when the Detroit years where we had like Bill Laimbeer and Chauncey and Swin Cash and the others from the WNBA side all on the same floor. I love that. The dunk contest went through some great years with Dwight Howard and Blake Griffin and the Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine battles. I feel like the dunk contest went through a little bit of a renaissance with Mac McClung in the past few years, but of course he's only really had a few cups of coffee in the NBA. He's not an NBA player. So I was looking forward to Jalen Duren being in the dunk contest. I thought when he wasn't in the field, maybe it was an injury thing, but he played before the suspension. So I hope we'll get to see him at some point. I think he could do pretty well in the dunk contest, but I can't say I'm excited about this field. And I don't really know what the NBA can do to get the top tier players to compete. It seems like they just don't want to do it. So I hope there's a way to fix it. I'm not optimistic about this year's edition, but I hope they prove me wrong because it's an event that's been great in the past, and hopefully it can return to that.
All right. Well, one more unfun thing to talk about here as we're starting up the show, but how about the suspensions for Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren after the altercation that takes place with the Charlotte Hornets? So Isaiah Stewart, he got 7 games. Jalen Duren only got 2. Unfortunately, one of those games can't be the All-Star game, so Duren is going to have to miss the first game back after that break. But, as the fallout of that whole thing kind of came through, what were your thoughts on it? And, is there any impact you think to like this team really long term now with Isaiah Stewart missing 7 games and Duren having to miss 1 more?
Yeah, I mean, I think when the suspensions were handed out, it's definitely fair to wonder how the Pistons are going to manage without Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, obviously without Isaiah Stewart for a much longer period of time. But I think they put any of that concern to bed by going out and destroying the Toronto Raptors in the first game without both of them. And obviously, Duren only has one more game before he can return. Stewart's the big one. Yeah, Pipper423 is saying in the chat that Stu only getting 7 games is a break. I mean, when he leaves the bench, and I don't fault Isaiah Stewart for what he did at all. I think it was a heat of the moment thing. And I know us who pay attention to this team know that that's not the guy that Isaiah Stewart is. Like, he's definitely an enforcer, but it seems like the national narrative after the LeBron altercation a few years ago was that he's a fighter. And I think this, like the headbutt between Diabate and Duren, I've watched it back numerous times, and I feel like you can't really tell who initiated it. And then there were some punches thrown. I think Stewart was just sticking up for his teammate, which I don't really fault him for doing that. I think the biggest thing that I was talking about this with some colleagues is how it could potentially impact Isaiah Stewart's eligibility for postseason awards. He still has plenty of wiggle room, but we know last year he didn't meet the minutes criteria of 20 minutes per game. Now he'll be suspended for 6 games, which puts that 65 game number into question, but he's made appearances in 48 games so far this year of 53 at the break, and he's going to miss 6 more after the break. So he still has some wiggle room there. So I think that's a positive sign. And I mean, Paul Reed going out and dominating against the Raptors, I think will be huge for the Pistons while they wait for Stewart to return. And I think him and Jalen Duren can definitely hold things down while Isaiah Stewart serves those additional 5 games once Duren is able to come back. So it was a bummer that Duren and Stewart are going to miss some time, but overall, I don't fault either of them necessarily for what happened, and hopefully there's no real long-term impact that comes out of it.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that Stewart has the buffer, right, for the awards eligibility. He deserved it last year, so I do, as a fan, like, that's important for me. I love Isaiah Stewart, and I would like to see him get some sort of accolade for being essentially the best defensive big man in the NBA this season. So the fact that that's still going to be on the table, that's nice to hear. I like that. And then, as far as the actual altercation itself, say what you will. All right, I'm not going to say someone started it, someone didn't, or it's a really bad look or a good look. I don't care. None of the conversation around it matters. What Isaiah Stewart did, right or wrong, his teammates love him for it. Like, if he didn't do that, then he's not Isaiah Stewart, and the guys don't look at him the same way. And for, it's, as much as it sucks having that 7-game suspension that he's now serving, and yeah, you're going to have to miss him now for a game against the Knicks. You're going to be missing him for a game against the Thunder and the Spurs. But like, in that moment, him standing up and doing things like that are why this team adores him so much as a teammate. And so it's hard for me to say one way or another, like, he definitely shouldn't have, or he definitely should have. I wish he wasn't suspended. So as a fan, I wish he didn't do it. But at the same time, like, you also got to understand the locker room element of all of this. The reason they've got all this chemistry, that all these guys are so tight knit and close, is part of it is because Stewart's that kind of dude that'll just at the drop of a pin be out there to enforce someone that stepped over the line against one of his guys. Like, every team in the league would love to have a guy like Isaiah Stewart. They would love to, and it's because they know that he'll do something like that. So whatever it is, it's all unfortunate, but at the same time, you both do and don't want him to change. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like it's just an unfortunate reality that they need.
Yeah, and I think it was like Stewart obviously wasn't in the game when the dust up started, and we know how leaving the bench is just automatic discipline is going to be handed out. And I think when the dust up started, like Stewart had that in mind, but when he sees Miles Bridges go at his teammate and one of his good friends in Jalen Duren, like almost unexpectedly, like he wasn't involved in it. I really think it was a heat of the moment thing. And Isaiah Stewart was sticking up for his friend and teammate in Jalen Duren. So I don't fault him for that. And I mean, I'm not an NBA player, but if I was, one of the guys that I wouldn't want to mess with is definitely Isaiah Stewart and also probably Jalen Duren. And I know there was some talk on the internet after about how Duren and Diabate had some stuff going on all the way back to high school. And I think you saw that a bit with how mad Diabate was after seemingly nothing crazy. Like, yeah, Duren shoves his face out of the way and stuff, but Diabate had to be.
Duren scored on him about 3 possessions in a row, and then gave him a good elbow shiver on a defensive rebound too. So, there was a little bit of build up. But to be fair, like all of that was kind of building all game. You kind of got the sense that there was going to be something that occurred there. Like you didn't want what happened, right? You would have really rathered that Duren did not shove Diabate in the face after they started jawing nose to nose like that. Like if you want to find the real like things got out of control, that was it. So I guess don't be mad at Stewart, be mad at JD, but at the same time, like don't go run your forehead up someone's nose if you're a Hornets. It was all bad. There's no one that's coming out of that thing looking good, in my opinion. I think we just move on as fans for both teams and say the next matchup's going to be a good time. Because I bet that it is. This is the kind of stuff that makes fun NBA rivalry, regular season stuff. So like embrace it, but also let's stop litigating it. No one wins here. This is all bad.
Yeah, and I mean the Hornets aren't really competing to make a huge playoff push, but they're kind of in the play-in conversation.
They are solidly in that play-in conversation. They have been fun to watch.
Yeah, they have. And hey, if that's where they wind up, and there could be a potential first-round series on our dockets, which a 7-game series between those teams would be pretty interesting. That's for sure.
My money is it'd be a 5-game series. But
yeah, it wouldn't be 7.
Yeah, it wouldn't be 7. But I do think that the Hornets would give the Pistons a little bit of trouble in the playoffs. And it's a credit to the Pistons defense that we saw them do to the Hornets what they already did. You just need to make sure that translates. They're a fast-paced team. They shoot a ton of threes. Historically, that's something that's given this version of the Pistons some trouble over the past 2 years. But they've already kind of clearly shown that they can overcome that. It's just now you're going to have to overcome it 4 times in a row, right? But, all right, you mentioned Paul Reed. And as the title of the show, at least for the live stream, says, All-Star Bball Paul Reed. Now, he's not actually an all-star. But can we talk for a second about what he did to Jakob Poeltl in that Raptors game? Because what a poor Jakob Poeltl. His first, like he's in a ramp up period after a lower body injury, and he's got to try and stay in front of Paul Reed, who then promptly led the Pistons in shot attempts.
Yeah, you're preparing for Jalen Duren, who's an all-star, and Isaiah Stewart, who's one of the best defensive centers in the league and can also shoot a little bit. And then you just get Paul Reed, who's really the only big in the fold. And I mean, shout out to Tolu Smith. Like he didn't go crazy by any means on the.
I was going to say he was solid.
Yeah, he had some good minutes, which the Pistons will clearly need without Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren. But yeah, Paul Reed was the story of that win over the Raptors. I mean, another incredible game for Cade Cunningham that we certainly can't overlook. But any time the Pistons have needed Paul Reed, it seems like he's stepped up and been able to provide some production. Sure, some of the shorter stretches of minutes he can be hit or miss, but he's never afraid to go and get his own, which is what I love about him. Sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's not. It was real pretty against the Raptors, scoring 22 points with 5 rebounds and 3 assists and 4 blocks in a game where the Pistons were going for their 40th win before the All-Star break, which none of us could have expected. They end up going and doing that, and then right before the All-Star break, the Thunder drop a game to the Bucks. So the Thunder have 42 wins, but in terms of win percentage, the Pistons have the best record in the NBA at the All-Star break, which is just crazy. And Paul Reed was a big part in getting that win that took them there.
Paul Reed, too, it's for all of the attention that his scoring is going to get, rightfully so. He was 10 of 17 from the floor, scored 22 points, 1 of 2 from the 3-point line. He had 7 stocks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the thing that always shocks me so much with Paul Reed. Like, he's undersized, and he's not, as far as big men go, right? He's not a huge dude. He's not built like a brick or anything like that. He's athletic as all get out, but like, he's not. You don't look at him and think, well, he's going to set a mean screen or something like that, right? But what he can do is he moves really well. He's pretty explosive. So that, like, the trap that he does almost routinely every time he's guarding the screener in a pick and roll set, it's really effective because of how quick he is. He surprises guys with how well he can get up off the ground quickly. That's why he had those 4 blocks. Like, Paul Reed, his first half was unbelievable. The second half wasn't as much, but he shocked the Raptors. That's what happened. They didn't see this coming. And honestly, I didn't see that coming. But he came out so aggressively on both ends, it kind of sent a message and a tone for that entire game. And the Pistons were able to carry that through. Like, how many times can we really say that this season? A player other than Cade Cunningham really came out and set the tone for how that game was going to go. Because that's what Paul Reed did in my book in this game.
Yeah, and it wasn't a game that the Pistons could, like, I was worried about that game when you hear that you're not going to have Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart, and the Raptors are a good team, and they've even been playing well heading into the All-Star break before the game against the Pistons. Like, they beat the Thunder. They had a really tough West Coast trip where they win 4 of 5 games, and then after that they win 3 of 4. So it's a team who won 7 of their past 10 games heading into the contest against Detroit. But on paper, I mean, whenever Cade Cunningham's available, like, the Pistons are going to have a good shot to win. And like you were saying, just all the depth pieces we've seen step up when they need to. The Pistons are going to have a great shot, but it's a tough game. And Paul Reed was able to set the tone and provide some of that additional scoring alongside Cade Cunningham that was desperately needed when you don't have Jalen Duren. And I mean, Duncan Robinson makes 2 threes. He had a decent night with 13 points and Tobias Harris with 12, but you needed that secondary offensive production, and it came from Paul Reed. So, I mean, just a great showing from him, and just a great game from the Pistons overall in general to get a really nice win heading into the 2 nice wins, because the one against Charlotte was great too after the chaos, and you miss Stewart and Duren as well there and find a way to hold on. So a couple really good wins. They have 40 wins before the break, which is crazy, and that's even with dropping a recent game against the Wizards. So they've just played incredibly down this recent stretch here.
All right, kind of fun question from Pistons fan 11 in the live chat. It says, did they tell Paul Reed to do that, or do you think he just decided to go out and have the game of his life here against the Raptors?
I feel like he just decides. Like, Paul Reed decides when it's going to be Paul Reed time. I mean, like, it's inherently known that when he's your main big, like, you're going to need more out of them. But I think the majority of it is just Paul Reed being Paul Reed.
I don't know. So there's a difference between Bball Paul and Paul Reed. That was Paul Reed against the Raptors. Like, when you see Paul Reed get in garbage time, you can see it. There's just a different style. He's trying to ISO a little bit more. He does the mid-range pull-up jumpers a little bit more. Like, all that stuff, to me, that's Bball Paul. what he did there against the Raptors, that's Paul Reed. He did nothing out of the ordinary. I think they just told him to be aggressive, and Jakob Poeltl couldn't keep with him. I really do think it was just as simple as that. The stocks were, I think he maybe caught the Raptors by surprise. That's not a coverage that the Pistons do all that often when he's not on the floor. So it does make sense to me there that, the 3 steals he gets, and a couple of them I know were coming out of those pick and roll sets. Like, Toronto was not ready for that. It probably doesn't show up on film all that often. I do think that's a bit of a mistake for them because you do have enough Paul Reed minutes where that shouldn't have shocked you, but it's enough out of the ordinary from the Pistons' usual coverage where I think you could explain that away. The offense, though, I think that was a Jakob Poeltl decision, not so much a Paul Reed decision. I think he just started putting his head down, realized that guy couldn't move his feet yet because he's still recovering from that injury and on a minutes restriction, and he took advantage.
Yeah, he really did, and I mean, it shows in what you brought up. And Paul Reed took the most shots on the team. He had 17 field goal attempts compared to
he was Jalen Duren in this game offensively.
And like a really great version of Jalen Duren. Like we've talked about at times over this year, like Duren has that hot start, and then we want him to see him be more aggressive and get more field goal attempts. And that's like exactly what Paul Reed did. So it was huge in a game where the personnel just isn't there as it normally is. And I mean, Dennis Jenkins has provided that offense at times. Of course, he didn't start, so it was a different story, but Dennis just had 8 points against the Raptors, so the offense needed to come from somewhere, and it came from Paul Reed. It was aggressive. It was working right out of the gate, and he just kept going back to it, which was awesome.
All right, let's get to this question. Kind of a fun one from Jacob Ball. It says, my question after the New York and Toronto games, how do we get more minutes for Bball Ball? What do you think?
Oh, man, that's I mean, who's it coming at the expense of? Like, it's not coming at the expense of Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. So, I mean, is it Javonte Green? Is it Ron Holland when he's available? I mean, I think that Paul Reed is going to remain in his current role, just being there for foul trouble or if someone isn't available, which is a bit of a shame. Like, he's always been an overqualified third big, but it's great to have in what seems like a good situation for both Paul Reed and the Pistons. So I'm not anticipating like a ton of extra minutes. I mean, it would be fun to see. It's just there aren't that many minutes to go around. Like, he's averaging just under 13 minutes a game over the first half of the season in 38 games. So maybe you see that go up to 15 or so, but obviously that comes at the expense of someone else. And how the rotation is, I'm just not really seeing where it comes from.
Yeah, to me, this is just like the best problem to have in professional sports, right? Like, the Pistons, they have reasonably 12 guys that on any given night you kind of look at them, you think like, for a lesser squad, they'd probably be getting minutes. I'm looking at Paul Reed and Marcus Sasser for that as well. Javonte Green would go. Let's see. I'm trying to count it out here. We got 1 for Kevin Huerter, Cade coming in, Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson, Isaiah Stewart. That's 5. Levert 6, Asar 7, Holland 8, Duren 9, Jenkins 10. Okay, yeah. So they got 13. Sorry, my bad, guys. They have 13 players, I think, where if you look at them, most nights they'd be good to go getting actual rotation minutes for another team. And it's just the Pistons are a very, very good team. And sometimes good teams have really, really good depth. So it's just a good problem. I don't think there's really a way to do it. And frankly, I don't think you really want to do it. As fun as Paul Reed is, he's not as good as Isaiah Stewart or Jalen Duren. And like you mentioned, like, you don't want to take Ron Holland's minutes away. You don't want to take away from Javonte Green, who's been playing extremely well. as well, right? Like he's perfect injury relief or in the case of like a suspension. And we've seen Paul Reed a lot this year. So like the injuries happen, right? It's not like we never see him suit up on the court. So yeah, I just think it's a good issue to have, and he seems to be okay with it. Winning kind of cures all ills. There is my guess. So I'm with you. I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're still gonna like. I don't think that there's any bad juju like there really couldn't be between Paul Reed and the coaching staff or whatever because he's under contract for next season as well, and then he's a free agent, but he's on a smaller deal relatively, and it's not a contract year for him, but he's going to take advantage of every opportunity he gets to prove at his next contract when he's only 28 years old that he can maybe be a high level backup big or maybe can start somewhere for some team. So I think you're going to continue to see this production out of Paul Reed and the opportunity that he gets. And especially when there's one more game without Jalen Duren, 5 more without Isaiah Stewart, you're going to see a lot of Paul Reed over that time. And then even when they're both available, the injuries, foul trouble, whatever it might be, there's going to be opportunities for Paul Reed. And I think he's the type of guy to just want to take advantage of every opportunity that he has.
All right, just to put a bow on this, Pistons fan 11, can we move Harris to the 3 and play Paul Reed a little bit because of that movement? Harris at the 3, is that something you'd be all that interested in seeing? I probably wouldn't be, but what say you?
I mean, yeah, I would just wonder about like what the guard situation like. Is this in the second unit a bit? I think you could and try it, but I don't think it's a long-term thing I would necessarily look for. And I mean, Paul Reed playing alongside Isaiah Stewart is fun. But I just don't know if it makes total sense for how this roster is set up and how JB Bickerstaff wants to play. So that is a way to get more minutes for Paul Reed. I just don't see it happening, I guess.
All right, so let's get our one all-star question out of the way. This is the Beastman 17. Says that he really hates this 3-team stuff. I'll let you figure out the other word that was used there. It says just go back to 2 teams. So what do you think about the all-star game format? And we could kind of use this as a bridge to just really briefly talk about what's been going on with the all-star game in general, what you think maybe a fix is or not. Is it even something that could be fixed, I should say? Because, you mentioned it. There's not as much excitement and competition surrounding All-Star Weekend in general, and that's definitely true for the game as well. So what do you think of the format this year? And then, long term, are there any changes you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I have like a surefire fix in my mind. I think the USA versus world team is interesting because there really are just some of the best players in the league are Europeans, and then some of them are Americans as well. I do think it's a little weird that you break up 2 teams into like 2 American teams versus 1 team world. The mini tournament, and I'd have to double check the format again. If I know it's 12-minute games, but if it's an Elam ending or whatever it is, I actually enjoy the Elam endings just because I think that's a way in exhibitions to get teams to play good defense when you can only let up 1 more basket and then you lose. So I think that's a decent way to keep it going. But yeah, overall, I think that a lot of the all-stars you're seeing right now, like you still have your classic Kevin Durant's, LeBron James, whatever you want to say about his all-star selection this year, Steph Curry. Those guys are older and they probably need a break during this time. So I don't fault them for not going as hard. I wish there was a way to fix it. I am skeptical that this format that they have right now is going to work. Just going out on a limb, I think next week we're going to hear a lot of maybe backlash against what happened, and then we'll probably see the NBA make a slight tweak or another change like they've been doing over recent years. I think 2 teams in a full game would be fun, but there has to be a way to give that game a little bit more juice. But I'm not sure the players want it that way. And I thought what Kevin Durant said about how like the Lukas and Jokic's don't try either. Like it's not just them. So I sort of think that's how it is. But maybe once you get these younger guys in, like Cade and Duren, and there's 6 first-time All-Stars this year, including Duren, they're going to want to show themselves on this stage. But yeah, I think it's just an excuse to have fun. And I hope the NBA comes up with a way to make it a bit more interesting. I'm not sure if this format is going to do it, but I hope it does.
I don't think it's going to do it either. I do just want them to go back to East versus West, throw the ball up and let the guys play a full game. Just call it a day. You don't need to do anything funny, change anything up, because God's honest opinion, there isn't a fix. There's not a fix. This is the players. If the players don't want to play hard or, hard enough, right, to a reasonable level where they just kind of up the give a crap level a little bit. If they don't want to do that, well, they're already getting paid a ridiculous amount of cash and salary. All of these guys are. They've already got all of the, the fame and fortune and brand power for being all-stars already. You're, donating to charities, nice, but that's not going to really get them going either. Like, it's the players. It's just the players. So Pistons fan 11 says if Bball Paul were an all-star, he'd play hard. I got Caleb said Jamal Murray said he'd play hard this year. Like I genuinely believe it's just, if the players are going to want to show up one year, they're gonna. If they don't, then they won't. So you're right to bring up the young players. I don't think Wemby's going to be dogging it. I'd be surprised if Cade and JD were as well. Like some things have to go and get bad enough and be embarrassing enough for the people involved to say, actually, I'm going to be the one to change it. And once you get a couple of guys doing it, then, I think it'll start to swing back around. It was at one point in the 70s and 80s a very, very competitive basketball game. I'm aware of that. And we've been slowly pivoting back into this less competitive direction for quite some time ever since then, especially kind of sped up there in the teens, the 2010s. And, I bet it'll go back if the NBA just kind of stops messing with it and lets it get bad, which I know is not something that they want to do. But if it's embarrassing, I bet the pride will show up a little bit. That's all I'm trying to say.
Hey, the NFL, the Pro Bowl is like much worse. So I guess the NBA has that to go off of.
And that one genuinely has no fix because there's such a high injury risk and the players know it.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess the NBA has that. And just for Pistons fan 11 asked how it works. I did some quick research. I actually don't think they're doing an Elam ending. So it's 3 teams and 4 12-minute games. So the first 3 games like decide the championship. And then if there's a tiebreaker, there's like a point differential element. So similar to what we saw in the NBA Cup when you saw some teams trying to run up their point differential and other teams play more defense to limit theirs. You might see some of that. Hopefully we don't see blowouts and we get 1 or 2 game winners. The Rising Stars last night did an Elam ending and it was okay, but the championship was decided at the free throw line, which is not fun for anyone involved. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it's a little more competitive than we've seen in years past, but yeah, like Wes said, it just depends on the players on the floor.
Yep, you can't plan the players into playing better or harder, in my opinion. But hopefully, like you said, it is at least interesting to watch. My hope is that we get a mini version of what happened all those years ago when Chauncey, Rip, and Ben and she checked in, and like
That was
all of a
awesome.
sudden there was some defense being played out there, and you saw it. Like I just want that little bit of time. Like JB's coaching, I believe, Cade and JD. And if those guys are out there together, like I'd love to just see a little bit of that energy tick up and just be like, send the message to the league. This is Pistons basketball. We're still going to be playing it out here too. That'd be fun. I don't know if that's what's actually going to happen, but I wouldn't say it's a 0% chance. I'll just put it that way. So I'm hoping to see that. Final thoughts on All-Star game, All-Star weekend before we move on.
I mean, just to add to like Cade and Duren are on the same team. Cade's also playing with his high school teammate Scotty Barnes, so that's fun. And they have Anthony Edwards with them as well. I mean, I think the world team, depending on how they compete, will be tough. That one has Luka, Jokic, Caleb shouted out Jamal Murray, who's making his first All-Star appearance, and obviously Wemby. So all the teams are solid. I would say that the Cade and Duren team has the highest makeup of like young stars, which I like that aspect of thinking that they're going to go to try and win that game. So I like their chances. We'll see how it goes, but I think mainly it's just for all of them to have some fun out there.
All right, so this was a question from basically two guys. So two people asked this in our DBB comments. This was Detroit DK and Shag. So what two teams do you think are going to be the hardest matchup for this Pistons team in the playoffs? How would you attack them in a series? And then what would be the X factors on both sides? So this could be just carte blanche, right? So any team, if you're looking at the playoff picture right now, it's the Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, Raptors, 76ers, Magic, Heat, Hornets, Hawks, Bulls, and Bucks for the full play-in game.
Cool. And just should we just limit this to the Eastern Conference just to be sure?
Yeah.
I mean, the Thunder would be a tough matchup for anyone.
Yeah, good point. Let's just limit this to the East.
So I would go. I mean, the first one that sticks out to me is the Celtics, and they're second in the East right now. And we'll see what happens with Tatum and everything and whether he comes back or not. Even if he comes back, he more than likely will not be at full strength. But with the Vucevic trade, I mean, Vucevic has been a guy who's been able to kill the Pistons at times over his career. Obviously, in that deal, Boston sends out Anthony Simons. So that's offense that they have to make up for, that you're probably not getting all that from Vucevic. But I just think it's pretty incredible how without their best player, they're still second in the Eastern Conference. And there were some front court questions, and you have Keita, who's been good as well, and he's still in the fold. So I think that matchup could give the Pistons some trouble. I mean, I don't think that there's any team in the Eastern Conference that the Pistons necessarily can't beat. I just think the Celtics might give them a tougher time than others. And then the other one I'd go to is the Cavs. I mean, a lot of unknown with them as Harden is still getting acclimated. I just think when you have two scorers like Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, there's going to be a ton of offense coming out of that team. And I mean, the defense backcourt wise is the question. So can the Pistons keep up? I think they can, and they've been one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. So they can certainly do what they can to limit Harden and Mitchell and even Mobley and Allen for that matter. But yeah, I just think when you have two guys that are averaging 25 plus points a night, it's going to be hard to keep up offensively. So I'm hoping the Pistons could come up with a game plan to defend them well, because we'll see the 2, 3, 4 is really tight in the Eastern Conference. So one of the Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, the Pistons will probably have to play in the second round, which I think are all of all of the toughest matchups there. There are some others at the bottom, which are interesting too. But I just go to the Celtics and the Cavs. I think that would be the biggest challenge. And I mean, X factors for both are defensively, probably how Jalen Duren does defensively, how much pressure Asar Thompson is able to put on Jaylen Brown or James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, and how they're able to limit it. The good thing is Detroit has hung their hat on what they can do defensively this year. So I think they can. I just think it'll be a bigger challenge over a 7-game series.
Yeah, my mind goes to the defensive side of the ball as well, right? I think like you look at the types of teams the past year and a half or so that have given the Pistons some trouble. They are fast-paced teams with one kind of hub ball dominant scorer and then a bunch of shooters around them. So like you're looking at the Eastern Conference this year and teams that really fit that. I think, it's the Celtics, like you mentioned. It is the Hornets as well. The Hawks in a weird way too, but like now we're getting down near the bottom. It's really interesting because like you're looking at the top of the East, and stylistically the Pistons are pretty well set to take on the Knicks, Cavs, Raptors, Magic, and Heat. I think the 76ers could be a sneaky one. That could be tough. And with the Celtics, I get the whole Jason Tatum talk, but he's not going to be Jason Tatum if he really comes back. He won't. It's impossible. There's no way he could. He'll still be impactful. He's a good player, good defender, good shooter, but like it's not MVP level Jason Tatum. So point is like, I don't know. I mentioned this on From Half Court the other day too, like with the Celtics, with the Cavs. James Harden in the 3 games so far has basically been a more efficient Darius Garland, averaging almost the same amount of points, rebounds, and assists, more assists, and he's shooting more free throws as well. At the same time, he's just doing it more efficiently. But like he can't move, he can't run on the perimeter. So defensively, like I think you do have some concerns with what Harden can do and what he can give them on that end. And because of that, like the Cavs are really vulnerable to that type of basketball as well, just like the Pistons are. And so you start going down again, and the Cavs are certainly going to need to get through one of those style of teams, most likely to go ahead and play the Pistons if they can jump up to the bottom side of the bracket. Like there's a world where like the Cavs can't play Detroit until they get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And at that point, it's like, how worried are you about the Cavs even making it that far? I think that I don't know. It's really weird to say because the Pistons are such a shock, but they match up well against a lot of these teams. They really do. Yeah. So it's like the Celtics and Hornets and Hawks that give me the most concern, but like the Celtics are number 2. You're not going to have to play them. As long as this holds, you're not playing the Celtics till the conference finals either. And yeah, I'm still pretty confident you can get through the Hornets, right? Like there's so much more talent in Detroit. So yeah, they actually are well set, I think.
Yeah. And I think you bring up the Sixers that was the other one I was thinking about, but obviously health is always the question with them. Joel Embiid has been on fire since the new year started, really. But we'll see how his health holds up the rest of the way. And Tyrese Maxey has been one of the best scorers in the league. VJ Edgecomb's having an incredible rookie year. So they're a good team as well. I mean, they're only 1.5 games back of the Raptors for the 5th seed. So if they're in that 4-5 conversation, that could be a second round matchup with the Pistons. I mean, I think the Pistons would ultimately get by the Sixers, who are also playing without Paul George right now, but he'll be back for the playoffs, and we'll see how much he figures into the rotation at that point. But yeah, I think just like there isn't really a juggernaut in this conference unless you're talking about the Pistons. I don't really think that they're at that status right now. I mean, they can win really any game, but you've seen them let up a little bit and like lose to the Washington Wizards recently. But But overall, I think the Pistons are the most complete team in this conference right now. So I think they'll be able to beat anyone in this conference. It just we'll see what happens when we understand where the playoff picture falls and how they have to get by whatever matchups are in front of them.
All right, let's start going a little bit quicker. We do have quite a few questions to get through, but this was a fun one from Camille. So as he said, he mentioned that Downtown Deuce, I think, brought up this possibility. So he wanted our idea on it. So do you expect a rotation where Isaiah Stewart moves into the starting five and Paul Reed serves as the backup center? In such a scenario, who would fall out of the equation? I can give my answer super fast, just a few sentences. I do not expect that sort of scenario. And I could say, too, confidently that if Stewart did move into the starting lineup and Harris moved to the bench, it's not Paul Reed that's the backup center. It's Isaiah Stewart still playing the backup center, just staggered. They wouldn't be dropping anyone else out of the rotation to do it because Isaiah Stewart's still a very, very good center. And if you're moving him to the starting four spot, that's fine, but you don't want to give up what he does really well. So all that's to say is I think it would be a 0% chance on both accounts. Well, all right, I'll give it like a 15% chance that Isaiah Stewart one day ends up starting for this team before the season ends. 0% chance, though, that Paul Reed is the backup center on a nightly basis, unless there's a big injury.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wonder who falls out of the starting rotation in that scenario and how that would impact the shooting mainly. But I think Isaiah Stewart should be getting more credit in the sixth man of the year conversation. I just think he's been incredible. And I know awards other than defensive player of the year and all defense teams obviously tend to give some weight toward scoring and everything, but I think Stewart's just been invaluable in that situation. And couple that with what Jalen Duren is doing this year, I think it's just like working well right now. So why break it? I understand the argument of Stewart's playing so well that like, should you start him at some point? But I just think it works. And if you're playing Duren and Stewart alongside each other, like what if one of them gets in foul trouble? I feel like that just throws everything off a bit, especially in the scenario if like you want to stagger Stu in and keep him in as the backup center. So yeah, I think it's unlikely just because Stewart as your first man off the bench is working so well right now.
Pistons fan 11 brings up an interesting thought. Like, what about doing double big against the Cavs? And, I'd say just to this, like, think back to what the Knicks did last year in the playoffs when they started going double big. What did it allow the Pistons to do? It actually made it easier for Jalen Duren because then Duren was guarding Mitchell Robinson. You already had Tobias Harris on Karl Anthony Towns. I think the Cavs are a very similar problem. I know that they've gone double big in the past, but they also haven't gone double big in the past. That is the Pistons, because you know what? Evan Mobley is pretty movable as a big man. He's not a overpowering force. He is just tall. Tobias Harris puts up a good fight on Evan Mobley. We've seen Asar Thompson put up a pretty good fight as an undersized four against Evan Mobley. So I think it could happen. I wouldn't bank on it more than like a coin flip. All right, this one's kind of interesting. This is Jacob 30 says that I've been seeing a lot on Twitter recently on the idea that the Pistons get away with fouls because of their reputation. Do you think that that is actually true? So Blake, just to put the full context to this, do you think that the team that gets called for the most fouls per game in the NBA is getting away with a bunch?
I see what you did there. No, I don't. I think just over time, obviously over the past few years, I think they've been respected more in the sense of like getting to the line a little bit more. But I think that there have definitely been some questionable calls with the Pistons being called for fouls. And I think that they do have a bit of like a reputation of, we know what Isaiah Stewart's reputation is and everything like that. So yeah, Wes said it perfectly. Like they're getting called for the most fouls in the NBA. So I don't think that there's much more to look into it there. But hey, maybe it'll change if they make some serious noise in the playoffs. I think all teams should be officiated fairly evenly. So hopefully Detroit at least goes down to that middle of the road.
I blame Stan Van Gundy for this. In the game, I forget what game it was where he was on the call for it. And I love Stan. He's great on the call. But he said the Pistons' defensive philosophy is basically to be as physical as possible under the philosophy that the refs can't call all the fouls that you're going to be committing. And that is not what I see this Pistons team doing on a nightly basis. I mean, they are very physical. They are very aggressive. But the idea there is not to like step over the line and assume that the refs can't just call you for fouls all night. They're already getting called for a ton of fouls all night. And just because the other team's complaining about contact doesn't mean that there was actually a foul there. We've seen that plenty right across the NBA. We have challenges now. So just because a guy complained doesn't mean that he actually got fouled. We can go back and prove it. A lot of times the player's wrong. Point is, the Pistons play a very physical brand of basketball. And that's the end of the story to me. Like, they play physical, they play aggressive, they play that style on both ends, and they're officiated accordingly on both ends along those same lines. They're up near the top of the league in free throws attempted as well. So they just play a little bit more aggressive on both sides. I mean, you could see it in the charge numbers. They don't take a lot of charges because they'd rather make a play on the ball. That's been a pretty constant through line for this season. So, like, are they getting away with stuff? No more than any other team as a percentage of the fouls that do and don't get called. But they also get called for a ton, and they get away with a little bit more at the same time. Both things are up is the point I'm kind of trying to make. So it's not like their reputation is allowing them to get rid of things. In fact, I'd still argue that like they get called against them 50-50 calls all the time for the stuff that the reputation's supposed to help you out with. Like, I have seen Isaiah Stewart block a shot that was right at the apex and get called for defensive goaltending. That, frankly, that shouldn't be happening anymore. If it's 50-50, you give it to the guy. That Gobert's been getting it. Wemby's already getting it. Chet Holmgren gets it. Like, you can go back. Ben Wallace used to get it. Like, this is just established practice in the NBA. Isaiah Stewart should be getting it too, and he hasn't been so far this year. So, like, if anything, I'd even say the reputation part hasn't kicked in yet. I bet it will happen, but I don't see the evidence that they're getting those respect calls yet, even though maybe they should.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, and I think that just goes to this like reputation that they have of like getting in mix-ups last year, and the players that they have that are known for that around the league. So hopefully it evens out if they are a true, like if they make a run to the NBA finals or win a couple playoff series, hopefully it evens out a bit, but I'm with you. I don't think it has yet.
Yeah, one last little bit of proof to go to the point we're both making here, but like, how many times in this past week even have you seen a player Asar Thompson was guarding fall due to no contact of Asar Thompson? And that's a 50-50 call. And who does it go to? Because it ain't Asar right now.
Right.
It will be. I'm very confident that it will be in the future, but hey, maybe he's got to make an all-NBA defense team before that sort of respect starts coming through. Oh, yeah. I think that's a little nuts because he's been an incredible defender for 2 seasons now, but hey, whatever. It is what it is. Where's the Rodney Dangerfield joke when you need it? But it is what it is. Can the Pistons go 20-9 down the stretch to reach 60 wins? This is from Lee County Fly Dog.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're asking a team who's winning over 75% of their games ahead of the All-Star break to win 2/3 of their games the rest of the way. I think it's very doable. Obviously, you have a tough schedule. You play the Thunder twice, you play the Wolves twice. There's games against the Knicks and Cavs and Spurs in there. So it's not the easiest schedule, but there's also 2 more games against the Wizards and 2 more games against the Nets. Like, I don't think the Pistons are going to want to drop any other games against those teams, especially if they're fighting to keep that number one seed in the East. I think the one thing that could mess with this is if the Pistons do really get that far ahead in the East and they sort of shut things down a bit in the regular season. But I think there's a ways to go until that becomes any realistic conversation. And at that point, if they're that far ahead, they maybe already won 20 games at that point. So I think it's very realistic. Am I positive that it's going to happen? No, but I think this team has just exceeded our expectations in every way this year. So you can't doubt them to do it the rest of the way.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is you kind of alluded to it. Going 20-9 down the stretch is actually a lower win percentage than the Pistons have on the season right now. Like they just understand, like when you're trying to look at, man, is this even realistic? Is this something they could really do? And mind you, the Pistons have had one of the most difficult schedules by record in the league so far this season. This would actually be performing worse than they did to get into the All-Star break. Like technically 20-9 is a step down. That's just kind of the level that the Pistons have been playing at against really good teams. I think they're either like 6-2 or 7-1 against the top teams in the league right now. And granted, you haven't played OKC, you haven't played the Spurs, but still, they've just been dominant. And is it like a mandatory goal to get 60 wins? No, but if they just keep playing the way that they are, they'll actually be over. They'll be like 22-7. They'll be at 62 wins to finish it out. So I'm rooting for it. We'll see. Pistons fan 11 again. Would you rather them rest guys down the stretch or chase OKC quickly? Like I think it's a mentality thing. I don't think that this is going to be a group that rests players unless it's like the last game of the season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I think like it would be awesome to have the best record in the NBA, but I think the number one goal is getting the one seed in the East. And I mean, the Thunder are like, I almost just think like, don't really worry about them, obviously, when you play them, but in the grand scheme of things, don't worry about them until you would potentially play them in the NBA finals and have to figure out how to beat them. So I wouldn't be upset if the Pistons had the best record in the East, but not the best record in the NBA. I think it's a nice hang hat and can really tell you like what this team has done, but there's so many other things that you can look to as well. So that wouldn't be a huge concern for me as well. Just go into the playoffs healthy. And like Wes said, I don't think they're going to sit a ton of guys until it's the last few games when everything's all set in stone.
Yeah, and these guys are all aware of history as well. Like I feel like if they're to a point where 60 wins is on the table, I'm sure all of those players are well aware of the last time a Pistons team won 60 wins, got 60 games. And then I think like the best record in Pistons history might be 62 wins or somewhere along those lines, maybe 64. So like if that's ever possible, I wouldn't put it past this group
64.
trying to hunt for it. 64. Yeah. So it just doesn't seem to be in their DNA to me. I just would be pretty surprised. Kind of a two question. So they're both similar though. So first from Chi-Town Chiefs, can Cade Cunningham win MVP this year? And then in general from Ramester, what would Cade Cunningham's stat line need to be in order to win the MVP even in a future year?
So I don't think it's doable this year, and I get why it's coming into conversation. Like he's the best player on right now, the best team in the NBA. I just think like it's incredible what some of these guys around the league are doing. I mean, I'm sort of would be dumbfounded, honestly, if things keep going this way. And Jokic, I mean, he's missed a ton of time, so he has to play almost like every game the rest of the year. But that guy's averaging a triple-double with 12 rebounds and 29 points, which is just incredible. And then Shea's averaging 32 points a game on a team who has 42 wins before the All-Star break. So I think if Cade was up near those Shea numbers in terms of scoring, that would be in the conversation. Maybe the rebuttal to that is Cade's the only one besides Nikola Jokic that's even close to averaging 10 assists per game. Jokic has 10.7, Cade has 9.6. So there are some points that Cade's contributing to that aren't in his scoring total. So I think in the future, I mean, I think Cade definitely has a potential MVP in his future. I think to do that, unfortunately, like it really has to be in the scoring numbers. He's never going to average a triple double. I don't think you want him averaging 10 rebounds a game because that doesn't make sense for a guard. But I mean, he's only shooting 33% from deep this year. If he increases that and byproduct of that is scoring like 29, 30 points a game, and the Pistons are the best team in the East, then I think those are MVP numbers. Not to like discredit the year that Cade Cunningham is having. I just think Shea and Jokic are the clear front runners, and I'd be shocked if one of them wasn't the MVP this year.
Yeah, and maybe the games played thing kind of takes Jokic out of the running. That could happen. I agree with the long-term thing. It need to be getting the points per game up. So I'll just say then quickly that the only route I personally could see to Cade winning an MVP this season would be the Pistons not only are the best team in the East, they're the best team in the NBA by record by multiple games. If that happens, right? Like if let's say the Thunder finish at 57 wins and the Pistons are at 62. That is such a surprise. That would be such a shock, I think, to the, just to the national NBA space that you might need to just give it to the guy because he's clearly the best player. In that case, then by some solid margin, the best team, right? Quotation marks in the NBA. The Pistons are doing it with less talent in that equation than the Thunder have. The team success would be what elevates it up. I wouldn't be putting money down on that. I would not be confident that occurs. I think there's also a world where even under that circumstance, you would need like Jokic to miss another few games so he doesn't qualify, and SGA to maybe have a little bit of a down slump spell, right? Things like that. But if the Pistons really end up like 4 or 5 games better than the Thunder, you got an argument. I'll just put it that way. You got a really good argument. Last 2 questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Will the Pistons have any room to make a big move in free agency? Very quickly here on the Spotrac salary cap table for next year, the Pistons are not under the cap by a solid amount.
All the cap holds.
Yeah. Yep. So Duran's going to have a cap hold. Obviously, you've got Tobias Harris has a $40 million cap hold. Kevin Huerter's 27. Let's see, what's the other cap hold? Javonte Green, that's not going to be it. So a bunch of smaller things outside of that. Jalen Duran's at 20, so he's going to get extended above that. They could, if they got rid of everybody, right? They just rejected all of these cap holds. They could get underneath. But right now, just renouncing essentially Tobias Harris and Kevin Huerter, you are still over the cap. So no, they're not going to have big space for free agents. They could make some trades. They got a lot of space underneath that first apron, even without changing anything. So there's room for them to make a big addition if that's something that you want them to do as a fan. But in terms of free agency, no. Even if they were to renounce everyone, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the most they could get under the cap is right around just under like $20 million, which at this point is not nearly enough to make a big swing.
And like that's not including Duran, right? Because like Duran is
you would have had to renounce Jalen Duran's $20 million cap hold to even get to that. Yeah.
So that's like the swing for me. Like we know Jalen Duran is going to get extended. So that sort of just takes the Pistons out of being a cap space team this summer. Just looking at the free agent class, I mean, it's always like this, but I don't think you can definitely improve the team, but I don't think there's incredible fit to where like you have to allocate a ton of money to go and get this guy. I think the more likely opportunity, like you said, to improve the roster is through a trade, and we'll see what happens there. We haven't seen a big trade that this front office has made yet, but that's always been how the Pistons could considerably improve. I mean, Trajan Langdon's done a great job on the free agent market. So we'll see. I just think the flexibility will be going down a bit with like Cade's extension obviously kicking in, and the looming extension for Jalen Duren, and Asar Thompson's going to be eligible as well. So we'll see what happens with that.
Way too early, because obviously we've got a whole heck of a lot of awesome Pistons basketball to be talking about the rest of the season. But once we do get to the off season, I am really, really, really going to be hoping that they can just renounce that $40 million from Tobias and get him back like some amount less than the MLE. If you could get him in the 12 to 15 mil a season range for maybe 1 or 2 more years, he's been so vital to this group. I would love to see him transition to that bench role long term. So, but that, that's a conversation for another day. Last question here. This is from Turia. Hopefully I said that right in the TBB comments. Does Malik Beasley signing with the team in Puerto Rico officially end a possible NBA comeback this season? And is it Bad Bunny's team? Did I read that right?
It is. Yes, it is. I didn't know.
That's so funny.
I didn't know
either.
Yeah.
I also love that, like, this is such a loophole because he is under federal investigation. So he can't go overseas to play. He can't leave the country as far as I would expect if you're under federal investigation. But Puerto Rico is a territory. This is such a funny story. When I saw it, I was laughing pretty good. But I mean, is there any chance? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I didn't think about that, honestly. I was like, why is he going to Puerto Rico when there's much more competitive basketball there? But that makes complete that makes complete sense. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not willing to really like commit to anything until we hear actual news around Malik Beasley. I mean, if he's cleared, maybe a team brings him back, but I don't think that's really realistic right now. And obviously investigations take time. This one's already taken a ton of time. So, and he just signed this contract that I'm sure there's an out if he has an NBA opportunity. But I'm just not willing to be hopeful about his like return to the NBA immediately until we hear some specific news.
Yeah. And then look, guys, from a Pistons perspective, they've moved on. It seems, I think they've moved on. At this point, it feels kind of like even if he were eligible to come back this season, like where's he gonna go? What minutes does Malik Beasley have in this group right now? Where you could say, maybe for Kevin Huerter, but okay, fine. Like you're not waiving him this year, so maybe next year, because the Pistons, I think, still would have his early bird rights. As weird as that sounds, I do believe that would carry. So, like, if you really, really want Malik Beasley back in Detroit, maybe that's something that happens, assuming that he gets cleared from all of this in a reasonable enough time. But at the same time, like the Pistons have a draft pick. Yeah. They're going to add players in free agency and in trades. And they've already got 13 guys that are, rotation locks. And sure, you're going to lose 2 of them right now, but it's only 2. I think it's over. And it's sad, but I think it's over.
Yeah. I mean, existential circumstances, like who could have imagined this? And the team's done a great job to make up for what Malik Beasley brought. I mean, you can't replace all of it, but Duncan Robinson's done a great job bringing Kevin Huerter at the deadline. Karis LeVert's been up and down, but he's contributed at times as well. So I'm with you.
And plenty of great shooters in the draft this year that are probably going to be available in those 20, in the 20s for the picks. Like, you can go, maybe Chaslanier's going to take a step, right? There's plenty of ways to get rotation shooting that wouldn't require bringing what is frankly a lot of baggage along with it.
And you got that pick swap from the Timberwolves. If that comes to
only
fruition,
helps.
Yeah, you can move up a little bit potentially.
All right, guys. Well, I think that was it. Looking as a quick scroll through the live comments here, but I don't think we had any other questions. So I think we can wrap it up there. Thank you all for tuning in here on a Valentine's Day afternoon. I hope you didn't get in trouble.
Yeah, and reminder, you can call our number to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting this show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.